Test. When I lose a duel, I'm upset. Before we get started, I just need 30 seconds of your time to talk to you about something, and that's the OneFootball app. As I say every video, I wouldn't have accepted this campaign unless I genuinely liked and used the app, and I do use it and I love it. The OneFootball app gives you all the information you need to follow football. News from around the world, fixtures, results, stats, and whatever United have done to ruin their club today. The best feature, especially in the transfer window at the moment, is the aggregator of transfer news, which all goes into one feed, so you don't have to go around the internet looking at Reddit or Twitter. You can just find it all on one feed here. Go and watch the demise of Manchester United live on the OneFootball app. You can download it for free from the link in the description. Spoiler alert, obviously. When Arsenal announced they'd be taking part in Amazon's All or Nothing documentary in July 2021, Mark Ganella, Arsenal's media and communications director, said this: "One consistent thing we hear from fans is their desire to see more about what happens behind closed doors at the club. All or Nothing will give our fans and sport lovers an opportunity to learn more about what makes Arsenal such a special club, our trophy-laden history, and our ambitions for future success." I find the wording of that statement, no doubt chosen by people in boardrooms far above Mark Ganella, very instructive. The key decision makers in the Kroenke family and Arsenal's executive structure clearly wanted to begin to show themselves in a new light, to be listening to fan desires, reconnecting, interested in showing how Arsenal work in a way they never had before, not just for our fans, but for everybody. Arsenal have no doubt had offers to do this sort of thing before, so why now? As they greenlit the filming, Arsenal had just finished 8th for the second season in a row, and the club's reputation was at a low ebb. Internally, however, the club clearly felt they were turning the tide, backing Mikel strongly in the market and promoting him from head coach to manager. I'm sure the board and owners felt there was an opportunity that with a well-judged and curated documentary, they could go some way to changing that negative external perception. The reputation management that the documentary is doing isn't happening in isolation. Arsenal are engaging more in the community, improving their relationship with their fans on match day and beyond, bringing the women's team closer, and even have a documentary out about Hale End. They're being more transparent about the future via interviews in club media with Edu, Vinay and more. To me, the placement of Josh Kroenke's appearances in the Amazon documentary are not a coincidence. He may look like a supervillain, but his appearances in times of chaos at the start and end of the season feel particularly curated to make him look like a sort of benevolent, rich uncle. There are those that would say its careful curation discounts any value it may have, that it's just PR. But to me, it has a lot of value. By being aware of its intention as a front-facing message, we can be conscious of the lens that the executives who signed off on the show would like us to see through, and that can inform our response. Whether it's been inspired by him or not, all of this clarity and desire for newfound connection from the club all feels like it comes from one place. It has a life force, a purpose, the fulcrum of Arsenal's contemporary era, and undoubtedly the protagonist of the series, Mikel Arteta. The documentary was an opportunity to boost the reputation of Arteta too, who was not universally loved by any stretch. The plot had to show a club heading in the right direction, but Mikel had to be the leading character, otherwise the show would have fallen short of its function. In my opinion, Mikel comes across very, very well in the documentary. If for the last 10 years Arsenal has been Casa Pepe, where everybody has been doing what they wanted, as Arteta describes when speaking about the Aubameyang situation, then Mikel is the antidote to that. He is the standard setter, the firm but fair headmaster expecting nothing but the highest of standards in every match, training session and action on and off the pitch. Hyper and future-focused, Mikel exudes leadership throughout the series. The players and staff speak glowingly about his tactical understanding of the game, and his treatment of those around him feels intense, but powered by care and love of the sport, not ego or personal pride. Some of his speeches had me on the edge of my seat, ready to run through a brick wall for him. However, I did find some of his pre-match speeches slightly contrived at times. It sometimes felt a little like he'd read a how to speak to players part of a coaching manual. Use visual aids, repeat words, find a theme. I found him to be much more erudite and impactful when speaking spontaneously. His 2-sentence remark about the late reaction after the Everton defeat away at Goodison Park was a particular highlight. Sometimes less is more. His lightbulb speech with Nikola Jova scurrying around in the background was Brent-esque. The speakers blasting You'll Never Walk Alone before the Liverpool game, playing them North London Forever with the karaoke lyrics, and his funny drawings inspiring t-shirts, there's plenty of meme-worthy moments if you're looking for them. However, we have to remember that these speeches aren't for us. They're for millionaire footballers about to go out and do a job in front of millions of people. Where I personally might find phrases you find on a hustle Instagram feed a bit cringe, these guys are not in a normal situation and will likely have a very different perspective on everyday life. The visual aids, for example, to people whose first language might not be English, might be really helpful for his messaging. Clarity breeds clarity. If you made a word cloud out of what Arteta says in this series, the non-negotiables would certainly stick out. Passion, energy, commitment, respect. His main messages, sometimes to the point of overstatement at times, certainly get through. He does shout quite a bit in the series, sometimes to the point of losing his voice. There's a time and a place for that in high pressure environments like this one, and it never crossed the line into abuse. But as anyone who has children or has worked with children will know, if you're not conscious of how and when you're raising your voice, its effect begins to wear off, and I think it applies with adults too. I imagine as the teen grows more and more to his liking, he may feel less compelled to do so. One thing is for sure. Mikel is clear on what he wants and how he wants it done. As a player, you would have absolutely no doubt what behaviours are and are not tolerated and where you stand. If he's willing to leave out Aubameyang, someone Mikel said was the most important player at the club, seemingly pushed by him based on the meeting scene between Richard Garlick, Edu and Vinay, he could leave you out too. Moving forward, there can be no doubting that the culture and standards at the club start and end with him. I felt the first 2 or 3 episodes were a little bit vanilla. It was more like a season review with some kind of dressing room footage, but if you look closely, there were some interesting parts. Carlos Cuesta comes across superbly over the series. The individual development coach has a wonderful glint in his eye and is no doubt a future star of the game, speaking a number of languages. At 25 or 26, Cuesta speaks with the clarity and maturity of a man double his age, and his charisma feels warm and secure so as not to rub players of a similar age up the wrong way when giving them feedback, which he gives with extraordinary dexterity and sensitivity. I also completely agree with his assessment of Ben White's anticipation. He is excellent at reading the game. On Ben White, another small moment early on that I found incredibly insightful was Arteta's comments on his aggression in his game that he didn't see before. He's looked fantastic in the right back zone recently, as he's not expected to arrive out wide to defend and can show his on-ball quality a little more as he inverts into the right half space. As a central defender in the wide zones going backwards, he can be a little overzealous in the challenge without security behind him. It's good to hear they're working on that, and good to hear Ben learns quickly. To me, the talking head type profiles of the players were notable in terms of their selection. Saka, Smith Rowe, Tierney, Ramsdale, White and Martinelli amongst them. Young, hungry, high potential players, all of whom have a great deal to offer the club and form the core of the future of Arsenal. You can see the identity Arsenal are trying to portray. The only exception to that rule is Granit Xhaka, who's doing his own kind of reputational repair. I found his Players Tribune interview to be quite avoidant of responsibility and a bit bizarre, so to see him actually addressing the disciplinary issues head on was a good sign, if a little obvious they were trying to help us empathise and see his personal side by showing his family. It may just be the way it's edited, but he appears to speak the most in the dressing room and is clearly well respected. There's a reason he's entering his 7th season at the club without ever being dropped for any significant period of time. As the series went on though, there were some great moments. Stuart McFarlane's speech before the North London derby was an inspired move from Mikel, and Ramsdale's frustrations at conceding goals was a tonic for a dressing room that seemed sepulchrally silent at times after defeat. I found the way they dealt with the Aubameyang situation utterly compelling. I think I'm right in saying it was dealt with over 3 episodes, so they were clearly interested in showing the full extent of what happened. I suspect, given Aubameyang's comments about Mikel upon joining Barcelona, that there's no love lost there at all. I would have liked to have heard Aubameyang's side of the story, but it looked pretty damning for him based on the now infamous catalogue of misdemeanours that Mikel has. If you want to set a standard and a culture at a club, it has to apply to all. I like that they didn't shy away from the fact that not having Aubameyang was going to be hard. Edu, Vinay and Ramsdale all spoke about it. But as Arteta said, once you look in someone's eyes and the trust is gone, it's gone. Edu's joke about Disney World really made me laugh. I have to say, the scene where Rob Holding was explaining to El Neni what happened with Aubameyang felt quite set up to me. I'm not sure Rob was totally comfortable doing it and might have been told what to say. It was a little heavy-handed for me. The denouement of the show was utterly depressing. We really threw it away. Win any one of Palace, Brighton, Southampton, Spurs or Newcastle and we get top 4. Arteta's comments about how there was something missing inside the players must have informed his strategy this summer, signing winners in Zinchenko and Jesus, raising the technical and mental expectations and level. Other smaller moments that I found notable. Mikel's comment to Saka in Dubai about going forward first, you can see in his game. He's got so much better at receiving the ball on the correct foot, at the right angle, sometimes feinting and beating his man as he does here, but always looking to go forward first. It's hours on the training pitch. I'd have liked to have seen more tactical stuff rather than narrative-driven bits, but I understand why they didn't show more. Saka's moment with Teddy, the young fan who wrote him a letter after the Euros, was absolutely heartwarming, and I loved Eddie's comment to Sambi about not playing much. Wake up indeed. Nuno Tavares seems a sensitive soul, and I think it's best he spends some time away. You can see Mikel's frustration bubbling over with him at times, especially against West Ham towards the end of the season. He mentions how he was hard on him at half-time in that game, which we don't see and may have been unsuitable for TV, and against Chelsea directed a general comment about mistakes being okay very clearly towards him. With time and confidence, I do believe we could have a top player on our hands. The early signs at Marseille are great. Arteta is a man on a mission. A man who coaches kids in the street playing football while on holiday. is truly obsessed with the game, and you can see that through the series. He said to Edu he wanted to spend 15 hours after the Wolves game analysing the players individually on his day off, and his wife Lorena says that if his kids weren't at home, he'd just be in his office working. He's obsessed with winning every duel, starting every game on the front foot, repeating it over and over and over again. Overall, the documentary hits the spot, even if it's a little bit vanilla at times. Fans will have wanted more insight, more juice, more conflict. I'd have loved to know what the players said when Mikel left the room after the Newcastle defeat. But for what the owners and board no doubt wanted it to be and to portray, it does exactly what it should. It shows Arsenal looking to be heading in the right direction with the right people. And there are plenty of moments that, if you look hard enough, you'll find a great deal of insight. Based on the crowd's reaction to William Saliba's own goal against Leicester, you can tell Arteta's message of togetherness and unity is coming through to the fans. 3.5 out of 5 stars from me. By the way, I thought of a brilliant joke. Arsenal didn't win anything this year, so instead of calling the series All or Nothing, you could call the series Nothing. Guys, thank you so much for watching The Different Knock. If you like this video, please hit like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Please consider supporting us on Patreon monthly or head to buymeacoffee.com for one-time support. You can find me at AMOnFootball on Twitter, and we're at DiffKnock on all social media. Also, check out our podcast. All the links are in the video description. Thanks.